I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the panel members. I'm Marcel Laurando, I'll be chairing. Linda McFadden to my left and Sandy Tapper to my far left. The assessor today is Jamie Forget, right? And Michelle Lepin will be our administrative assistant. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit the discussions to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of property are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize it if they wish. Once the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close and all applications will be heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. I'd ask you all to please put your cell phones on silent. And the first property will be Watt, is that the one?
That's right.
Okay, so if you could read the roll number and then tell me what your rec is.
I need to swear.
Oh, you're going to swear you in first, I'm sorry. I'm 2 steps ahead of myself.
Yeah. Are you okay with the Bible or without? Can you state your full name, please?
Jamie Fisher.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Are you okay with the Bible or without? Can you state your full name, please?
James Justin Thompson.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So
Jamie, go ahead.
we're going to start with 392 Watt Street. The roll number is 0204018100. I'm prepared to make a recommendation at $36,000 for this property.
Is there a reason?
Property damage. Through
Property condition then?
property condition, vacancy.
Okay. And classification on the property, were you challenging that, the classification of the property?
Not that means.
Okay, you ticked off the box for classification on your appeal.
I want to make it residential, but there's a process I guess I have to go through for that.
Okay, so yeah, there's a process you can go through with the city after.
And I don't have money to do it right now anyways.
Okay, so we'll get you to sign off on that after? Great.
I have it ready.
You got it ready? Okay. So you're okay with the 36,000?
Yes.
Okay, then you're completed. Thank you very much.
Can I
I'll
just
get
get
you to sign this.
come and sign? So what we're going to do basically is we're just going to draw, the classification piece of it. Yes.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Go take care of your back.
Thank you.
If you want to swear in Mr. Rack.
Yeah.
Can you state your full name, please? Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I guess before we start, you have some rebuttal evidence, which is just some pictures of the comparisons from the assessor.
Sure, pass them out.
And the other is one of his comparables, the information is incorrect, so I provided the information on that one.
Okay.
Is this the couple? What do I call it?
Well, this is.
You're going to speak to it later.
Yeah, they're just pictures, and yeah, this is actually rebuttal evidence on one of my comparables.
For one of your own.
Well, he's submitted
Oh.
my information from 2016. I don't really have to go through,
We're not gonna go through anything yet, we're gonna let him go
yeah,
first.
but there's pictures of his comparables, so
Yeah,
you can use
well, you can
that.
talk about those when it's time. Right now, we're gonna go to Jamie, and we're dealing with 120 Higgins Avenue, Jamie. Roll number, please.
So roll number 13096046900. So there's 120 Higgins. This is Eliminator RC. It's basically it's a retail store in an industrial warehouse type of building. So haven't included many photographs in my brief. Just have the overhead and the storefront on page 8. If you wanted to, before we continue, you can see some photographs of the inside of the building on Mr. Rack's brief on page 2 and 3.
We'll do that when you present.
Sure. So basically, it's an older warehouse type of building. Very little work done through the years, no major renovations. I think it's sort of serves the purpose of the business that's there, which is more of a destination shop. It's remote control cars and model kits. It is on Higgins. You can see it's actually right by the overpass there. And my understanding is that when the overpass was built, there was some damage sustained to the building. I don't have much information on that. Ideally, an engineer's report or an appraisal that was looking at the impact of that construction would be best for it to help guide us with the impact that that bridge has had. But my understanding is that there is a lawsuit right now between the owner and the city over the construction of the overpass. That being said, we've tried to look at this property for what it is, a retail store in basically an older warehouse building. You can see on page 2, the current owner purchased it in 2009 for $410,000. And if you look on my page 14, this is the sales questionnaire that was returned to us. So they confirmed that it was arm's length and that was the sale price. It also says that they intended to do some additional work to the building, so floors, interior, roof, etc., air conditioning. From what I could see from the overhead shots of the building through the years, it didn't look like any work had been done significantly to the roof. I think that they put in some tile floor throughout, but nothing substantial. And the air conditioning was, I think, a patchwork of different units that they had there that my understanding is they faced some challenging with the heating and air conditioning of the building. So it's unclear how much money they put into the building after the purchase. But 2009 they paid $410,000. So on my page 3, I have a collection of comparables here. I looked at some industrial, some larger industrial, but not obviously too large. The subject here is 12,287 square feet. So I'd say out of the industrial comparables, they're actually newer and in better condition, and better locations, I would say. I would say 18 Stapleton is probably the best comparable out of those 3. And still at 739, I think that rate reflects a higher quality of space. We've used $4.78 here. So it's just to illustrate that warehouse space can be much higher than what we've applied here. And then below, since we are considering this a retail property, I've included some retail comparables since they've already been sort of outed by the rebuttal material that's going to be presented here. I've been looking at Giant Tiger, Dollar Store, Dollar Tree, and Chinese grocery store on King. And so these rates here again are significantly higher. They do suggest a better quality, better location. Obviously Portage Avenue and Donald and even King is in Higgins, but again we're using $4.78, and this really is the only large retail in the area of this type. And so I also took a look at the appellant's 2016 comparables. You know, at the time of my creation of my brief, this is the information that I had from Mr. Rack. So I took a look and just updated. Obviously in 2016 he had information that was from a prior reference date. Here they've just been updated from the city INEs. So if you took the evidence that he had from 2016 as a benchmark anyways, you'd be looking at an average of 538. I recognize that, you know, for example, on Pacific here you have a rate of basically $3.50 a square foot. There's definitely a range in a building like this. I think it does face challenges, but we've attempted to recognize that. And so page 4, you can see our valuation here. We've used a rate of 478, capitalization rate of 10%. Then on page 6, so on page 6 you see a list of reported or published cap rate ranges from some of the different companies as well as the city. And you know, through the city analysis, if you look at retail, neighborhood, shopping center, you know, the way that we've used that neighborhood shopping center traditionally as a property type to analyze, it includes a lot of different properties. Here they've rolled in retail store as well, so the high end here, $9.50, I think that would be closer to the subject. And then if you look at, well, maybe you can consider this an industrial building, although it does face its own challenges in that way. With it being wood floors, you can't operate a forklift throughout. But if you were to consider it an industrial building, the high end of the range is 9.5 there, that we've analyzed. And the reported rates are significantly lower from the different outside sources. But if you were to say, okay, well, maybe a rate of 9.5 would make sense, I think a rate of 10, generally speaking, a rate of 9.5 for a building of this vintage might make sense. A rate of 10, discounting it by half a percentage point due to location and sort of the history of the property, I think that would be fair. So realistically, I think the property hasn't changed significantly since the sale. 410,000 was what they purchased for, and I think something on that scale would be appropriate. We've assessed it at 466,000. So that's my presentation.
Lyle, question?
Yes, on page 1, actual years built 1912 to 1963. There's 3 buildings, and one being 1912, 1941, and 1963, correct?
Correct. I believe that portion that we looked at to the rear, I was under the impression that was newer. The portion where the trucks were able to unload, this sort of, if you look at page 8, it's sort of inset at the back of the building. Sorry, these pictures aren't very good. My impression was that was actually a newer portion than 1963. Are you? Yeah.
1963. I want to go to page 14, which is the property sale questionnaire. And they have indicated that when they purchased the property, they did not get a appraisal report, correct?
Correct.
And let's go to page 3. When you did the updating on those, are most of those, on the long-term leases, were those all step-ups?
They did not appear to be. I didn't have that indication.
So you think that these are, well, you have leases here, like, let's say,
Well, some of them would have to be because they're
within the time
dates.
frame of the
Yeah.
lease?
I agree with that, yeah.
Okay.
I do agree.
Okay, when you're talking about, when someone signs a lease and there's step-ups, would you agree that step-ups are usually small percentages? In other words, if someone signed for $10 and it was a 5-year lease, they pay $10 for maybe 3 years or 2 years, and it'd go up to $11, and maybe the last year it'd go up to 12?
Yes.
Okay. So if we're looking at number 1, 560 Marjorie, if that was a step-up lease, the indication you have by going through the incomes and expense narratives, that was a $2.07 increase, which is 46.5%. Would you not agree that's an awful high step-up?
If you look at the step between 1 and 2 years, obviously that's a big leap, but if you think, okay, it's been, I'm not aware of the lease breakdown, but if the steps are the same price for 5 years, and then they go up to another price for another 5 years, obviously that percentage would be spread out over a longer period of time in reality.
Well, if we went from that statement you just made, then that would mean that someone re-signed a lease for another 5 years, so it wouldn't be a step-up.
I'm only reporting here what's presented in the mailers.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not always reported whether or not something is a renewal that's been renegotiated, continuation of a lease, or a step up. The level of detail just isn't typically there. It can be, but unfortunately, here I did not come across that.
Okay. So if you go to number 2, Wall Street, that was a 10% increase, which seems reasonable. Number 3 is a 0% increase. And I guess you got the same answer for number 5, which went up 56%. That was a $2.23 increase, which would be a 56%, which I would imagine would cover the same lease period, 4 years and 7 months. But I guess your answer would be the same.
Right.
Okay. And the King Street, number 6, is 5.5%, which seems reasonable. And I guess Dublin went up 60%, so again, I guess you would have the same answer to that one. And Pacific, from your information, Pacific actually went down 33 cents per, correct?
I think it was actually, I don't remember the exact rate that you had prior. I probably should have included that column.
Well, you have that on page 11. So on page 11, those are all my comparables for that time period. That was for that brief. So that lease actually on Pacific, which is number 9 on page 11.
Right.
Okay, so I had that.
Yeah.
So that lease actually went down.
33 cents.
Yeah, it went down 10%.
Yeah, and my explanation as to why some of these fluctuate, even matter of cents from year to year, is that some of these leases are also gross. And I don't recall that one specifically being gross, but that may be the reason why there's a fluctuation in the
So from that statement,
netted rate.
okay, so from that statement, on page 11, those are all net rents I used. So you're saying that some of these updated leases that I used on page 3, that some of those could be gross.
If you're using the same leases on page 11, then that may not be the case, but I suppose I'm speculating to some degree. So.
Okay, that's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Sandy, any questions?
Has this property been inspected by anyone at the assessment department since the overpass went in?
We inspected it together a couple weeks ago, and did see the floor is pretty old, and there is some heaving throughout. The apparent impact of the overpass has been, I guess, additional heaving around areas, and I think Mr. Rack can probably speak to that better. But he did show me a few areas where the heaving was apparently due to the construction, the dragging of the piles for the bridge.
And are you aware of how the damage has affected the functionality of the space? Has it resulted in a change in how the space is used?
Not that I'm aware of. My impression is that it's, since it was purchased, it was the Eliminator RC shop, and that it's relatively gone unfazed. And again, I'm not all that familiar with their day-to-day operations, but they're still open, and they still have access to all their rooms.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. I have no further questions.
No questions? Okay, Linda. The other properties in this area, nobody seems to have touched on what the rental values are on them. Is there a reason why we stayed away from the other properties?
They either don't report, or they're owner occupied, or they're vacant. I looked throughout the area, there's really nothing much in the way of sales, nothing much in the way of reported rents. Sometimes there is a reported rent, but we can't determine what an individual tenant is paying. So just difficulties with the reporting. Definitely we would like to look at similar type of businesses in the area, if possible.
And this one is owner occupied, correct?
Right.
And it was since 2000, well, I guess it was since 2009 when you put the business in, well, 2010 when you put the business in, correct?
Yeah, beginning at 2, he bought it at 9, would have been
10, I think.
10s probably.
He's been reporting his information.
Correct.
His net operating income. Did you have any questions on any of his sheet, or that you didn't agree with the numbers? or-
Well, on his net operating income, it's actually, he's just carried down the total expenses.
Mhm.
So he doesn't have a net operating income because it's owner occupied, so he doesn't have a rent to speak of. So that net operating income should actually be like a negative figure,
Mhm.
because that's just the expenses for the building itself. I didn't specifically look at how that lines up with our expenses. And I didn't stabilize over 3 years here.
And you're not aware of any, well, you already stated, there is no engineer study on the building for anybody to look back at.
I have not received one. I made a cursory inquiry with Mr. Rack if he had any information that he could share about the lawsuit with regards to the building structure and value. But I think he wasn't able to share anything at the time, so.
No, it's all before the courts with that.
And I'm not using any kind of deduction for any kind of damage with my evaluation.
Well, let's get on to your evaluation then, and you can deal with your other information that you brought forward at the same time,
Sure.
as you see fit.
If you want to just turn to the assessor's comparables, as he's already described. The 345 Donald is a giant tiger, as the assessor has stated. It's a block from the MTS Center. The second one, 278 Portage, assessed as Dollarama, but that's actually across the street from the MTS Center. And the third one, which is the Dollar Tree, is actually across from the MTS Center, and it's actually connected to the Skywalk. The bottom one is the grocery store that he stated on King Street, and you'll see that it has parking for at least 22 cars. There is a loading dock for 20 trailers on the right. It's not in the picture, and basically it's got windows around the whole building. We have extra electrical for coolers and freezers. So those four comparables, I would say, are not even close in location to the subject property or physically anything as far as the year, anything close to the subject property. And I don't think any of those are comparable. If you turn the page, you'll see his industrial comparables on Marion. That has parking for at least 40 plus cars, a much newer building, again, not comparable. Number 2, as you'll see, that's on Stapleton, and that was, this is listed $7.39 per square foot, and underneath I have an ad, and that's currently from 2018, and you'll see that from initially the lease that the assessor provided started September 1st, 2011, 5 years, and right now they're asking for basically 11 cents more, which is a 1.5% increase. And you'll see that property does not go up significantly as compared to the information the assessor is given on page 3 of his brief comparables. And the last one is at 550 Archibald, which again is a nicer building with parking also in front of the building. And I don't think any of those are comparable to the subject property. Now I'd like you to grab that other piece of rebuttal evidence, as the assessor stated. On page 3 of my comparables for 2016, that this is actually 108 Alexander. It is an actual gross lease. And you'll see from the expenses there in the middle, the expenses for that particular year are $92,307, which comes out to $1.99 per square foot. If you turn the page, you'll see that that's the lease it's talking about. It's not 108, that's Alexander. That's the building. It's actually 110, Government of Canada, and that is a gross lease. In the first page, you'll see it's checked off in the front gross. So the
What page are we on now?
we're on this stuff. So on the front page, you'll see that the owner's checked off gross. It is a gross lease. On the second page,
Okay, why can't I find it?
I don't know. You have,
I've got this.
here, do you want to take this one?
I got it. Oh, here it is on the bottom, I'm sorry. I got it now.
okay.
Well, just
So
follow
again, we'll
along.
go to on the front page, you'll see this is screen capture from the information that's submitted online at the city for the income expense mailer. It is checked off, so it is a gross lease. Again, I said the expenses were $92,307. That's $1.99 a square foot. And if you turn the page, you'll see those are the actual lease terms and the tenants. It's actually, the building is 108, the tenant is at 110. It's Government of Canada. And actually, if you take that, you're paying $630 per square foot, which the assessor had on his page 3. That's actually a gross lease. So the net is actually $4.31 per square foot. You have to do a lot of analysis when it comes to gross properties, because you have to look over a number of years, like say 5 years of expenses to basically see how expenses go up and down in these buildings. For example, this particular building, if you look at when they re-signed the lease for that space for a new tenant, the rent is the same, but the expenses are higher, and actually it goes down to $3.30 net for 2017. So when it comes to gross leases, you have to look at the expenses over a number of years to determine what the net rent actually is. And from that, I'll go into my brief.
Can I ask questions of the rebuttal, or should I wait till the end?
You can ask questions.
Go ahead, let's do it now. Go ahead, ask the question.
Do you have a full sheet of, so this is like a vertical?
No, I couldn't capture the whole thing.
So do you know if they pay any recoveries?
No. As you'll see, that's why I use page 1, because page 1 has its gross.
Right, but sometimes the information that's on the second page doesn't match what's on the front page.
No, there's no recoveries.
Well, you can't see from looking at the page because the columns that would have the recoveries don't fit on the page.
That's correct, but it's checked off as a gross. It is a gross building. It's gross. There's one.
Would you agree that in a multi-tenanted building, some tenants could be on a net basis and other tenants could be on a gross basis?
In this particular building, I've been working with this building since 2012, and it's a gross lease. And usually in all these old buildings, they don't pull meters out and start metering each space separately, because it's too hard to do. And the other thing you come up against is once you start tearing stuff out, you have to meet present code. So therefore, the costs of doing that become tremendous, because you have to upgrade the building to the present code, building codes. So usually all these old buildings just stay the way they are. This is actually a gross lease, and I included the front page where it's checked off as gross.
There is another column on the second page normally that also has a checkbox. So if a building has 3 tenants that are net and 3 tenants that are gross, you can specify on that location. Is there a reason why you didn't include the rest of that page?
Because it was all basically just a bunch of check marks which prove that it says it's gross. And that page is quite large, and it's a gross lease. It always been gross there.
Okay. Thank you.
Carry on.
Okay, so if you look at the page 1 of my brief, you'll see that what the exterior of the building looks. The top is actually corrugated steel siding. It's not aluminum, it's steel. And it's actually, me and the assessor were there, I pointed out that the steel at the bottom, which meets the wood, is all rusted out. And the wood is, all the paint is coming off the wood. The steel on the top of it is starting to rust, and it has to be replaced. You'll see to the left of that, that's the King's Hotel. So you have this King's Hotel on one side, and if you look at the other picture, you'll see that's the Disraeli Bridge. And below that, you'll see, those are the three building sections. So if you turn to my page 3, at the very bottom there's an aerial shot. And I've labeled the three parts of that building. So on page 1, you'll see that's section 1, building 1. And that part in that picture, that's actually the building that was built in 1912. Section 2 was 1941, and you'll see from my picture what part of the building that is. And then you have the 1963 section, and again, it's shown on a picture on page 3. That's labeled. That's actually basically just cold storage. There's a door leading into section 1, and there's a door leading outside, so when they unload trucks, they bring all their supplies into building 3, shut the doors on both sides, open the door into building 1, and that's how they get all the deliveries and all their supplies to that door. So that part of the building is actually not used for anything except loading and unloading trucks. So you return to page 2. Those are some of the pictures of the 1912 building. And you'll see on the top there's been damage done from water coming in and from the roof requiring repairs. They did spray a membrane on the roof around July of 2016, past the valuation date, to try to stop that. The middle picture, you can see again, there's damage to the ceiling. I don't think you can see, but when the assessor is there, you can see that underneath that plywood that's on the ceiling, you can see the actual copper tiles from 1912, the pressed copper tiles. On the bottom picture, you can see that that's the actual original wood planking from 1912. There was wood screwed on top of that with tiles. The plywood has been worn away and removed, and the tiles are gone, and you can see some of the tiles are coming off in the bottom, and the tiles are all worn. You can see that basically it's original condition in that area from 1912. If you turn the page to page 3, again, the top picture shows the heating system. That's actually just gas fired that hangs from the ceiling. As the assessor stated, it's like an industrial building. The next two pictures are actually from the retail side, the 1941 building. You'll see that the fluorescent lights don't even have diffusers on them. It's original space from 1941. They did put down those checkered tiles when they purchased the property. And again, you'll see that there's an overhead gas-fired furnace. You turn to page 4. I missed this property for appeal in the realty for 2018, and but I did appeal the business assessment, and basically what this shows is the business assessment, net rent, and the net rent used for realty are one and the same. We're just trying to determine for business assessment what the net rent for the property would be in the open market, same with realty. So top part is the original business assessment, and you can see that the rent was basically $58,732. That's the estimated net rent. In the middle, you'll see that's a screen capture from the valuation of the store for realty, and you'll see that they have it as a 1963 building, which is the newest portion of that building. And I would imagine that 1963 age that was punched into the computer would probably drive the rent. So that's probably why the rent is high. And below you'll see that my argument at the Board of Revision was for $3.30 a square foot for net rent. And if you turn the page to page 5, you'll see that the board for the business assessment appeal agreed with me. And on page 4, the total value is $69,422 with utilities, and that's the exact number that the Board of Revision went to for the business assessment appeal. So the net rent was $3.30, and the board agreed with me that that would be the market rent for that property. So you turn to page 6. I have some comparisons, and first part box there is the assessor comparables that were used for other commercial briefs. The first one at 771 Main Street basically is located as you go underneath. If you're going down Higgins, you turn right on Main Street and you went underneath the subway. It's to your right on the top of right by the subway as you're coming up. That's Mother Earth Recycling. The second one at 125 Higgins is DMS Industrial. 125 Higgins is actually across the street on the other side of the bridge from the subject property, and that rents for $3.39 also. That's a brick building with a lot of windows in front of it, far superior to the subject property. The next comparable is 975 Main Street, which is almost opposite Selkirk, and that's Tradesman Mechanical. Again, that's got lots of windows, brick exterior, and superior property, and that's at $3.30 a square foot. The next one is 125 Adelaide at $2.80, and that's actually across from the Red River Community College new campus. The next one is 421 Malby, which is far away from the subject, but similar, and that's on Osborne as you go underneath the underpass traveling to Pembina Highway, and that's the Malby Flea Market. The last one at 312 William is the same as 125 Adelaide, except it has a separate entrance on the facing William Avenue, across from the Canadian Footwear, and that's at $3.85 a square foot. So the average for all those properties, and those are assessor comparables, and those are comparables, most of them except the top two, I couldn't find which brief they came from, but they came from an appeal I had for 92 Gomez, and that would have been file number 17640, and that's what the assessor at the time presented. So there are rents in the area, close to the subject property. They're in the system. The next set of comparables are from the Johnson report, and I would ask you to go down to 695 Barry. That's the wrong address, and just strike that comparable out. I'm not going to address that comparable. But comparable 1 in Jarvis, as you'll see, all those are all the comparables I have are significantly within the age range of the subject property. 244, 246 Jarvis is an older building like the subject property. The next one is 11 Higgins. 11 Higgins is just as you come over to Louise Bridge. There's a front of the building is all brick, and it's basically a warehouse. 1309 Mountain is actually a far superior building. Again, brick exterior and parking. 675 Washington is a brick exterior commercial building. 92 Gomez is just down the street from the subject property. It's basically a warehouse, but there is a section which could be used for retail attached to it. That's what that particular area is renting for, 261. You got 289 King Street, which is an older two-story building, again, 375. 935 Higgins, 935 Henry is a metal-clad building, warehouse style. 109 Higgins is actually right across the street from the subject property, brick building with vertical windows on it. So basically, from these comparables, you can see that from the assessed comparables from the assessor, that there are rents in the neighborhood at that value. So the assessor has a vast data bank of information and comparables to go for. He chose not to use anything in the area because other assessors have used lower rents in the area for appeals on that street. On Gomez is only a block away from the subject property. So based on the fact that the department or the board revision for realty or for business assessment agreed with me that $330 was an applicable rate for the subject property for its age and condition, and my comparables are using $3.30 to drive the realty value. Running through the parameters on the bottom there, you'll see you've got a value of $307,000. And I'd like to address the fact of the purchase of the property. They actually had, their original store was on Gomez and McDonald. And that store, the back of that store almost touches the subject property. So it was an emotional purchase for them. They decided to expand into the internet market. They have a huge website for the internet. And this building suited their purposes. They didn't get an agent. They didn't get an appraisal. I thought at that time when I went through the information, I thought they paid too much for the building. But it's something they wanted. It was an emotional purchase. Since it's very close to where they're already located, everybody knows where they are, so they purchased the building. I think the building is deteriorated from that time. It needs major work. I think if it came up for rent, it'd be extremely hard to rent it, even at that $3.30 for what it is, with the wood floors and its age. And I have a lot of comparables to prove that the rent I'm asking for at $3.30 is applicable for that subject property. That's my presentation.
Questions, Chairman?
You had mentioned the membrane on the roof was replaced or put in after the reference date of April 1st, 2016. You are aware, though, that it's the physical condition as of now?
Yes. They didn't actually replace the roof. They spent, I think it was, she said it was about $32,000. And what they did is they just cleaned it up. They didn't insulate it, they didn't rip it down, because the tar and gravel roof is a multiple layers of insulation, fiberboard, and then they put down the tar and gravel. All they did was actually spray a membrane over the roof, over all of that, just to try to stop leaking. If you had that roof replaced, it could be $89,000, could be $100,000 to replace that roof. Oh, I wanted to, I did forget. On the very last page, in my brief, you'll see the sidewalk. You'll see the bottom of the wood. You can see some coloring there. It's hard to, I tried to get a really good shot, but you can see maybe some coloring between the metal siding and the wood siding. Roughly, you can see like a little different coloration in there. That's where all the rust is on the bottom of that metal siding. And you'll see that there's some foundation damage on the bottom where the sidewalk has fallen. And that's, as I said, I have no estimate of that damage, and I'm not using any estimate or of that damage for the valuation.
Jamie, you still got a question?
Yeah, just one more. Are you aware of whether or not there's any appraisal done, given the fact that it's there's a lawsuit with the city? And
No, they haven't got an appraisal yet.
okay, those are my questions.
Linda, any questions?
You're contending that the damage, there's been damage occurred since 2010, since they bought the building, with the rebuilding of the Israeli bridge?
Yeah, what happens is, I have an engineering background, and what happens is that we're on clay, and clay structurally is like a pie-shaped particle that's perpendicular to each other. So when you shake the ground, they actually collapse. That's why you'll see when they build roads, you'll see tractors pulling like a round wheel with all these spikes on it. What they try to do is collapse that. So when you're banging in piles, you're shaking everything. So actually, that's what causes the damage, is that the clay actually starts to settle. And they pounded in numerous piles right beside. But I didn't come up with any estimate of the damage. And I don't think, for what's happened to the building, I don't think it's gonna make much difference for what you rented for the condition it's in. So I've come up with no estimate of what that may cost to repair.
So really, your contention is that this wasn't the rent that should have been taken into consideration when they bought the building in the first place?
Yes, and if you look at the questionnaire, for the sales questionnaire, it asks whether or not they looked at they bought it on the income approach. In other words, what it would rent for, and it's checked off as no. They bought it for their personal use, which a lot of times, as I found, that when owner-occupied owners, when they buy something, they buy it because they want it, not because there's an income value to it. It's that they want that particular property. And as I said, their old location is, the back of the old building almost touches this building, so that's why they bought it.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Sandy?
I have no questions.
I do have to ask the assessor a question. I noticed you didn't challenge any of the comparisons that you brought forward.
I did review them, and they appeared to be the rents that were reported. Yeah. And as to your question before, I couldn't find anything in the area when I had done my search, honestly. I think that something about this property that does make a difference, a little bit different, is that it does straddle the line between retail and industrial. As old as it is, and as many little fixes that it might need, it definitely serves the purpose that they have there as a retail store. While I was there, everything was dry and operational, and I wasn't tripping over anything or falling into any holes or anything like that. So I think that the sale price is what they were willing to pay, what the purchaser was willing to accept. I do have another question from a redirect for Mr. Rack. You had mentioned that nothing that's happened to the building from the building of the bridge really has affected the value any further than just the ordinary deterioration of the building. So if you look at the board orders historically for this building, they've been close to the sale price. 2016 was marked a significantly lower value than the sale price of $381, and then you're going lower still to $307. Is it then your opinion that this building is the deterioration is driving this downward trend?
Unlike the assessment department, I have limited comparables. I have to do a lot of research, I have to contact other people in my field for information, and the assessor has vast amount of information. I did get my number last time, 381. That was the best information I had at the time. Since that time, I've gotten more information, and I've done more research, and I thought the property was high at that. I wasn't even in agreement with the number I got, but at the time, that's the only information I had. I don't have the access to every income and expense mailer and every rent in the city. I have to do a lot of work to get comparables. This year, I did that work, and I got better comparables this year than I had last time. Some information that I'm using this year I actually purchased, which a lot of appraisers do, purchase rents and information from different companies. So I started doing that to get a bigger data bank for myself to appeal properties. And the comparables I have, regardless of what someone pays for something, when you go to the income approach, is what is the net rent you can get for it. I mean, the same thing as you could go, and buy a property in the north end and put hundreds of thousands of dollars in the house, you go to sell it, it's not worth that. And for this property, the rents have not moved that much, as I've shown on one of the comparables assessor used. In 5 years, the guy at the buildings, and it's a nice building on Stapleton, the guy's only getting 11 cents more, and that's asking. So someone might come in and negotiate and say, well, I won't pay $7.50, I'll pay $7.40, and they lease it. Now the guy got a 1 cent increase over 5 years. And this building and its location, the area's running down, is not as nice as it used to be. It's running down the building. They put virtually no money into the building. You're getting leaking through the roof. It's an old 1914 building. And now that I have better comparables, my comparables are right across the street. Most of those comparables you can walk to in like a minute or two. Gomez, 2 right on Higgins, 1 right across the street, and the one across the street that I used, that's been for rent for about 5 years. They still have rent there.
That's it for your question? Anything in, I hate to say this, anything in summation?
Have a good day.
Yeah, that sounds really good to me. Jim?
Have a great day.
There we go.
Go.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We are gonna take a 5-minute break. We're gonna shut her off, or maybe 10 minutes. And then we'll deal with you when you get back. Yes, I'm good with this.
Yes.
See how fast we can wrap this up. Jamie, if you want to bring forward the property. Oh, I'm swearing the applicant first, please.
You can stand up, please. Would you rather be affirmed or you select? Okay. Can you state your full name, please?
My name is Tang Ha.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Yes.
Jamie, we're dealing with 731 Wellington Avenue.
Yes, the roll number is 130-315-39100. And if you turn to page 11 of my brief, you see it's the property right on the corner of Beverly and Wellington. Basically, Mr. Tang purchased this, I guess, April 17th.
Yes.
April 2017. It was a retail store, but he's purchased it to convert it into a home.
April 18.
Oh, April of 2018. Okay, sorry. So it is post-reference, the sale. I think we're going to hear a bit more about that momentarily. I had a chance to inspect the property with Mr. Tang. You can see on page 12.
I just got asked a question.
Sure.
Yep. Right? Yeah, he calls him Mr. Tang. Mr. Tang Pop, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to.
Sorry,
Carry on.
Mr. Ha. Apologies.
That's okay. Call me Tang is good.
Okay.
Sweet.
So when I came to the property, went around back, and this is where I found Mr. Hop on page 12 here, doing some work. Some more pictures, the side of the building there on page 13. And then on page 14, unfortunately the picture's sideways, but this is basically the back door. And then page 15, as part of his conversion to a residence, he's opened up the floor to work on the plumbing. So he's basically lifted up the top flooring, and I don't think he's affected the structure of the floor really in any way, but below you can see here in the picture itself, it's actually mud right below, and the floor of the building is such that there's really is not a crawl space, it's not a basement, so if any work needs to be done, it really has to be accessed from above. And so this is right through the back door here. You're in the area where the kitchen will be, and this is looking into a bathroom. I think there going to be two bathrooms basically?
Yeah, we went
Right, kind of one in front of the other.
One.
The other for the hall.
1.5.
Right. Page 5, you can see that's the back door on the right side of the photo. So that's where we just came in from.
15?
Sorry, page 16. Sorry, I
Oh, I see.
have
Yeah.
the
Yeah, yeah.
email printed
See.
numbers. I read the wrong number. Sorry, page 16 is the back wall. And you can see here, it's actually plaster on the wall itself. There was no insulation. So as part of his renovation, he's gone forward and he's going to be building another wall out so he can insulate it. And he's redoing all the electrical as well. And so as you go forward, you can see some of the challenges that Mr. Ha faces bringing this retail building to be compliant as a residential home. So page 17, you can see this is the front of the building now. And you can see the windows, again, sorry that pictures are sideways. You can see that the windows are narrow, so they aren't egress windows. So that's, again, another challenge that he may face. So as we go throughout these pictures, they continue on 18, 19, and 20. I just want to point out that at this point, when I've inspected the building, I think it was in October, so it's probably a little bit further along now, but at this point he's gotten approval to begin the conversion to a residential home. But that approval and that change in use is contingent on it meeting the city's requirements. So that sort of circle hasn't been closed yet. We've given him the go-ahead to begin the work. And you can see here that the way that the work is progressing, he's got the framing, he's got the layout, and it's the layout that of a residential home. Theoretically, you could use it for other things, but it's built to be and intended to be a residential home. So as it stands now, this property is valued at 60T. As I mentioned, it was a commercial store on Wellington there. It's next door to like a mini mart type of place.
Goes to the corner.
Right. And the building is actually built, it's connected to the sidewalk. It's basically the, it was built as a commercial building, and until somebody comes along and wants to convert it, it would be a commercial building. Part of Mr. Ha's appeal is to do with the classification of the property. It is in a state of flux. He's purchased it with the intended use to be residential. But the process with the assessment department typically is that we wait till the construction is completed and all the approvals are finalized before we make any changes in that regard. So for example, just for illustration purposes, if somebody's demolishing a building, we don't take it off the roll until the building's gone. Or if somebody's building the building, we don't add the building to the roll until the building is complete. So we don't begin sort of mid-process. That said, we do expect that Mr. Ha will be completing the renovation soon. We don't know exactly when. Through conversations, we believe it'll be towards the end of the year or early in 2019, at which time the city intends to issue a supplemental assessment. And just to remind you, this appeal is to determine the value for 2019 only. And keep in mind that it will be superseded by any supplemental. Our position is that we expect the work to be completed, so we ask that the board confirm the value and the classification. In terms of the value, just as a background, I haven't included the sale price that Mr. Ha has purchased the building for. It's been on the market for several years. It was last purchased in 2013, you can see on page 2, for $112,000. We do have a sales mailer for that one. Just verify that that's included. Unfortunately, it's not included in our brief here. This is the INE of the previous owner. But at any rate, with a sworn value of $112,000 in 2013, I won't go into the sale price that was post-referenced, but it is below that, near that sale price, but below. So again, our position is that the property is in a state of flux, and that we don't expect that this assessment will really stand, since we're going to be revising the value. So our request is that the assessment be confirmed.
Questions of the assessor, Mr. Ha?
Yes, well, he said that we're going to do, by the time we complete, we do the supplemental assessment.
You're gonna ask him a question right now, right?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yep. Right?
And the question for him I posed earlier is, okay, the tax has already been paid for this year, 2018, the subsequent year will be 19 coming. I was overpaid, I was paying almost $4,000 for that piece of property on the taxes because it classified as a income property, and so far the income, there's no income in that property in the last 2-3 years. Because, so I think that if you base on that income to assess, then what I ask is, I already overpay. My expectation today is that to say that, okay, I bought it for 105, that is the value of it. We meet again next time, next assessment, 2000, whatever, the next time around. Is that fair to ask? That's what I'm asking him.
In terms of the value, I don't disagree that you are willing to pay $105,000, as you say, for the property, and that really it had been on the market for some time. So I don't disagree with that being an appropriate value. It's more of a procedural sticking point with our department that because we're expecting the work to be completed, that this order will be superseded anyways, that because this is in regards to 2019, again, we expect it to be superseded. But just on the terms of quantum of the value, you paid $105,000, it was listed. My understanding is that the purchaser didn't have any other offers. And it makes sense given the history of the properties, the sale of the property. $105,000 would make sense as a value.
Any other questions, Mr. Ha?
No, sir.
Sandy, any questions?
No?
Linda, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
So now, if Mr. Ha does not complete this project until 2022, this number would continue to ride until then, because you won't do a sup till that time, correct?
Correct.
So, in all fairness, should it not be a number that shows its current condition today? Because that's what we are dealing with? I know you've got
Right.
to deal with a certain purpose, but I mean,
Yeah.
should we not be looking at a value today?
Well, and that's the
And then you
tricky
can
thing.
correct it when you do the sup, be it in 2019 or 20 or 21. Because this project's been ongoing for 2 years already.
The project that Mr. has started here, I think it began shortly after he purchased the building in 2018.
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah, but your point is still taken. I don't disagree. It's a procedural thing. And as far as your point to the current conditions, it's current to January 1st, 2019, so in a way it's future conditions, which, just like you say, how can we know? That's the position of the department. Like I said, openly, he's purchased it for $105,000, and
Scary part is.
as a shell, before it's completed, that would make sense as a value.
The scary part is you haven't given us any proof on the permits that he's taken out on this building to start with. Normally we'd see some permit action on a building
Yeah,
like
he
this.
does have permits. They've actually not made their way to our department just yet. We have 2 systems that we can review permits in, and it's in the Amanda, it's in the state of flux, exactly, yeah.
You've
They've
now
not been
got a
closed.
question, I can see it.
I'm thinking this through, so that there is no income value on this property this year though,
Correct,
correct?
Yeah.
There is no income value on this property.
correct.
Okay, you're good? Let's get on with your presentation, Mr. Hunt.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. You know what, I bought a property with the intention that we're going to fix it up and my daughter, my university kid could move in there. And she's still at home with me right now. Anyway, my presentation is I disagree with the tax assessment saying that it valued at $148,000 based on the income, potential income in here and there. And I come and I talk to the city of Winnipeg a few times, and they said that I have to go to the Board of Revision to present my case because our potential estimation is $148,000 or $142,000 for the property. And the gentleman that sold the house, not that sold the house, the listing agent also said that this is way overvalued. You have no problem going up here. And the problem with this property is it is a residential area. My grandfather is commercial because that commercial was existed since eon. And so when I bought it, and I wanted to convert it to residential, and I did that. A month later on, there's one gentleman from the assessing department come and look at it in the end there. Then he make a call to the city of Winnipeg. So I granted the garbage bin is a residential and all those things, and I make the permit and send a permit to the planning department, the zoning department, and city of Winnipeg permit to do electrical, plumbing, and construction work. So it take a while to get approved, and now it's under the construction, under the renovation. So I think that I don't have much to argue than saying that, okay, it values 105. You see the outside condition, and you see the inside condition. Everything I have to touch, basically I have to cut out the floor and to do it. There's no crawling space. I cannot, nobody can fit underneath there. So it's a challenge for me, and overlook when I'm not a real estate guru. I didn't know that it was that much of a mess that I had to deal with. I thought, well, you know, the floor looked good because the carpet covered it, but until I pull the carpet out and then I can see the heave and all those things. So, but it's not a city, it's not a assessor problem, it's my problem, and I understand that part. The area is it very insecure, so put in the 4 camera and apparently the police has been stopped by and borrowed, using it for a few times because to capture the whatever the bad guy that I hope they can get, and I don't know how much luck they have, but I have 4 camera around the house, it building right up to the sidewalk, so everything is all barred up, and the egress is allow patient when in case of it burn to get out, but in this case, it's all barred up, and I don't know if it's safer to keep those bar up, or you have to remove them because the chance of the firing never say in the zero, but the potential for people can get hurt living too close to the street like that in a neighborhood that's not very sweet there. I don't know which one is better, but it's not a very, very, very safe area. Since I take it over and I called the city of Winnipeg quite a few times, and I'm sure they have that record for that, and because I also connected to the grocery store in the neighborhood, they have a garbage bin, so it become kind of like a garbage dump center because nobody lived there for all these years. Nobody renting it, and the property's been vacant. So the city of Winnipeg did come by and pick up a few garbage here and there for me, and then obviously I pay for $10 per couch, and there's 3-4 of them so far in the last several months. So that is not very well, kind of like a clean area. The garbage, basically, since that I do the renovation, I have a weekly garbage pickup myself surround the building, and also it's very noisy across the street. There's a school right across the street, like from people. When the kid going to school, the bus stopping by, the traffic jam, and all those things. And I think that kids, you cannot blame them. They eat the candy or whatever they eat through it, so you pick them up and all those things. But it look much better now. But I think that it very high maintenance actually there. And I look at it this way. I bought it for $105, and I think that I have a good deal, but I have a good deal to deal with it, basically. So I talked to James and Mr. Foucher, before, and I said that, yeah, nobody bought it in the last 3 years, and only a nurse like me from cancer care told buy it and think that it's a good deal. So I think that I'd rather keep it my day job instead of try to do this. But anyhow, I talked to the assessor, James, and he quite agreed, but he said that because of the procedure, you have to do this. That's fine. I said, it's worth $105. Value at $105. See you next time. Next assessment. Is that fair? Because it doesn't worth $148 in the last 3 years anyway. Can we get the money back from the city of Winnipeg? Well, if not, I'm not in a position to ask for that. But I thought, what fair is fair? We have the time and procedure to go. And James quite agreed with me. He said, well, that is our position, and we have the procedure we have to tell. But doesn't mean the board will be in agreement with James or agreement. They may take my
Your side, right?
my side. I don't expect you to take my side. To be frank with you, I think that it is fair. The tax has been overvalued, overestimated, and it's been over quite a few years. And obviously, because it's not me paying that past few years, why is it a problem? No, in a fairness, it already a problem there. And so, okay, from here to there, We don't need to talk to you, okay? Then from here to there, if you the next day I step in, you finish the floor, the ceiling, taxes right there, right there. That is a procedure that you have to do. But I think that it's fair. It's been overpaid. I pay $4,000, not four, excuse me, the exact number I don't remember, it's about $3,700 for the unused space myself this year. When I completed, I talked to Jim the other day, I said, I don't know, because the egress is yet about right. But when the inspector come that I may shorten age, then what? I may have to change all the window and all those things again. And I said that if you talk to the window guy, they will say that, okay, we do it right away. But for me, I don't want to do it right away. I do it in the summer when it's warm at a proper temperature, caulking and all those things done proper. So when are you going to finish? We're trying to finish it in July, James, but now it's November, we're still here. So knowing the renovation, the more I open, the more flaw that I see, that I hate it to just leave it the way it is. If I don't fix it, that's okay, but if I fix it, I want to do it right, even if it takes me a little bit of time, a little bit of money. So I think that my thought is, okay, we see you make assessment. Right now, it's 105, that's what you pay. It's an online transaction, that open market, and that is given the condition of whatever there. If you came 4 months ago, it have a bath in there, but there's no bath in there right now. So I think the assessment is over for a long time. So I think with the condition before I fixing, like people still renting, people still be able to live in it, is 105. So I think that's the value of the property, is 105.
We'll see if there's some questions for you then.
There's two assessors had come, and none of them have any argument with me, so yeah, the mess. It was 105, and that's what you pay.
Jamie, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Do you have any questions?
I don't.
Do you have any questions?
No.
The only question I have of you is, you've asked us to change the classification. Classification shouldn't come into play for safety reasons alone, because until they've done their inspections, we can't really give a classification change, in all honesty, because to change the classification, it's gotta have the egress, it's gotta be, your permits have to be concluded. So all those things have to be done before you have your classification. Do you follow that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Leave it with us,
Thank you.
and you'll be hearing back from us.
Yes.
And we'll see you this afternoon. You're going to work this afternoon, right?
And you want to stop by there?
I'll be there.
You're all welcome. I will be there.
See Dr. Rashad. Kick it off.